Welcome to Magnifico Recaps. Today we will narrate a sci-fi horror movie called Hollow Man. Spoilers ahead, so take care. The film loosely based itself on H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man, with Dr. Sebastian Cain replacing Dr. Jack Griffin. It also updates the story to the 20th century. The doctor in this Wells story is brilliant but a bit of a megalomaniac molecular biologist. He is currently working on an invisibility and visibility serum for the US military. Sebastian has been trying to perfect the formula for 4 years. He conducts his experiments with animals that are kept in a secret military laboratory, which is only accessible to him and his staff. His current project is to reverse the invisibility effect of his test subject, Isabel, a female gorilla. The team found that while phase shifting a living organism to invisibility is easy, it's very difficult to revert them to visibility. He works late at night to reconfigure the molecular model for the irradiated proteins that will restore Isabel visibility. He immediately reports his success and accomplishments to his top staff members. Sebastian spends almost all his time working on the serum, but he becomes obsessed with Dr. Linda McKay, his ex-girlfriend and a scientist on his team. She has been involved with Dr. Matt Kensington, another member of their research team, unbeknownst to him. Sebastian and his fellow researchers, which also includes veterinarian Sarah Kennedy, Carter Abbey, as well as technicians Frank Chase, Janice Walton and technicians Janice Walton enabled the serum to be used on the gorilla. Sebastian toasts the world's greatest research team at a fancy dinner. Sebastian feels that it is the end, as reversion was his last major breakthrough. Sebastian lies to the oversight committee, including his former teacher Dr. Howard Kramer. He also talks Linda and Matt into lying, claiming that Kramer and his board have given them permission to conduct human testing. Sebastian himself is the subject. The procedure succeeds despite a painful transition to transparency. Sebastian, after being unconscious for 17 hours from shock, wakes up in pain and recoils from the ambient light. He then realizes that he can see his eyes through his lids. He then performs clinical tests on his own. He almost dies when he tries to return to visible after 3 days. Sebastian is given a latex mask to wear around their lab. It approximates a human appearance. Matt discovers a promising method to make Sebastian more visible. However, the computer simulation fails. Sebastian's patience begins to decline over the next few days as isolation and virtual imprisonment in a lab become more frequent. He ignores Carter's rules and sneaks out to get Twinkies, books, and CDs to take back with him to the lab. He succumbs to temptation and first spy on Rona Mitra, his neighbor, then rapes her while completely invisible. Linda arrives at the apartment to find the mask and clothes but not Sebastian. Sebastian returns to the laboratory just as the other plan to pursue him. Linda warns him not to leave again and that Matt and she will inform Dr. Kramer about what they did. He ignores their warning and builds a device that records his heat signature in his quarters. The repeated image tricks Frank into thinking Sebastian is still at the lab. In fact, he is spying on Linda, Matt, and all of this is happening. Sebastian and Linda see Matt and Linda at Linda's house and plan to have sex. He also smashes Linda's bedroom window. Frank calls them and tells them Sebastian is still in bed. An enraged Sebastian, furious at Linda and Matt's idea of them together, returns to the lab. Sebastian approaches the dog to end the irritating barking of the invisible dog. He reassures the dog that he is not doing any harm and then he brutally smashes the cage wall with his naked hands. Soon, the team discovers that Sebastian had been leaving them unknowingly after they watched a recording. Linda and Matt visit Dr. Kramer's home to tell him about their experiment with Sebastian. Dr. Kramer is disappointed and informs them that they have been fired from the project. Dr. Kramer tries to contact the military to inform them about Sebastian, but Sebastian actually follows Linda and Matt to their house. Sebastian tricks Kramer to leave the house, and then he drowns in his own pool. Sebastian waits for the rest of the team to arrive in the lab, then disables all phones and elevator codes. He takes off his clothes and latex mask, and starts to track them down. Janice is left behind as the team searches Sebastian. He strangles Janice with an 4-line, and then stuffs her body into a locker. Janet's remains are found by Linda, Sarah, and Frank. Frank and Linda hide in the laboratory while Matt and Carter use tranquilizer guns to hunt for Sebastian in the empty hallways with thermographic imaging goggles. Matt takes a picture of a steam vent's heat signature. Matt looks around and sees that Sebastian has yanked Carter into the air from a steam vent. Matt tries shooting him, but Sebastian throws Carter toward a steel bar. This cuts his carotid and causes massive blood loss. Sebastian nearly kills Matt, but Linda pulls him to safety. Frank and Sarah find Carter, who is unconscious and very injured. Frank wishes Sarah to go alone and get blood for a transfusion. Seizing Sebastian's presence, she splashes blood around the room and waits for him to reveal his location. Sebastian confronts her, shoots her with her tranquilizer dart, and then breaks her neck. Linda and Matt discover Frank tending to a dying Carter. Carter succumbs to his injuries and the three of them go in search for Sarah. They find her body in the walk-in freezer. Frank uses a fire extinguisher in an attempt to expose Sebastian. But Sebastian appears from behind and impales Frank using a crowbar. Then he stabs Matt with his hook end in the lower chest. Sebastian locks Linda, Matt and the temperature control down and then freezes them to death. Sebastian takes much time to put on his latex mask, clothing, and makes sure he looks human. Linda wraps Matt's wound in duct tape, and then devises a way out of the freezer. Linda builds an electromagnet with a defibrillator, other equipment, and then uses it to open the door. She makes a fire for Matt to warm her and collects the parts necessary for a flamethrower. Sebastian had been using nitroglycerin in the lab to demolish the area and cover up the deaths of his team. He starts a timer, puts the nitro in the centrifuge, and then destroys the keyboard. As Sebastian is about to exit the elevator, Linda appears and starts to blow her crude blowtorch at his face. Sebastian's latex mask and clothes are charred to ashes, but he barely escapes the flames. Linda uses the flamethrower as a torch to light the ceiling sprinklers. This partially exposes Sebastian. They fight, and just as she is about losing, Matt comes out and strikes Sebastian with the crowbar. Sebastian recovers and grabs the crowbar. However, while wet, he swings it and connects to a fuse box. He electrocutes himself. Sebastian becomes partially invisible as the electricity runs through his body. His muscles, bones and organs are visible, but his skin, hair and skin remain hidden. Linda and Matt see the nitro about to explode and decide to abandon it, climbing up the elevator shaft. The lab explodes, filling the shaft in with fire. Sebastian arrives just as the two are about to be finished. He fights Linda and kisses her once more for old time's sake. Then, she grabs the elevator cable and throws the car free, sending Sebastian plunging into the inferno below. Both Matt and Linda eventually emerge from the burning laboratory.